Hi, this is Ian Eagle from CBS Sports. WEX on, WEX off starts right now with Jason Wexler.
Another exciting edition of Wex On, Wex Off. Wastes no time going out to the phones. Joining us now, the voice of the New York Mets and my former ESPN Ithaca colleague, Keith Raad. Keith, what's going on, man? Thanks for making time.
Yeah, good to hear from you, Jason. It's going on, what, 7 years ago that we were up at ESPN Ithaca, but it's just funny how life takes you places. You never know who you meet, and you never know how that'll work down the road. So good to hear from you, man.
And I knew I made the right decision going to whatever that was, Chili Fest or whatever. There was some summer festival. I remember talking to you, and I was like, "Hey, this guy's gonna be big one day." And you go from the all accesses to I forget. I know you went somewhere after ESPN Ithaca, and you worked your way to the Cyclones. You were somewhere between ESPN Ithaca and the Cyclones. Is that right?
Yeah, so ESPN Ithaca, once I left that in May of 16, I went to the Long Island Ducks. I finished up a year, jumped in a little bit of the way into that baseball season. Did a year with the Ducks. Then in 2017, did a year with the Frisco Rough Riders in Texas, and then with the Cyclones in 18, and then I was with them until January of this year.
Right. And you're a guy that's from here, right? So pretty much able to eventually get where you wanted. And I know you really enjoyed, doing your work at ESPN Ithaca, doing the updates. But is play-by-play where your heart's at?
Yeah, and to be honest, that year was pretty eye-opening for me to go from I had been in minor league baseball for 2 years prior to leaving to go to work for ESPN Ithaca, which was the first time I was offered a full-time salaried position. So I thought, okay, this is a little bit of structure just to get started out of college, but it just wasn't the right fit for what I wanted to do, my skill set. Um, it was a great taste of what's possible and what else is out there and being well-rounded and doing updates every morning and having that work ethic to come in at 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever it may be. And there's only a couple people at the station. So sometimes you're in at 5 and then that night at 11 o'clock at night. But it wasn't what I wanted every day. I remember when we moved into the spring of, I started at the end of the summer into the fall and winter, and then ended up leaving in the spring. Sorry about the ambulance in the background. Just part of talking to a kid from New York. But I remember we were doing a high school baseball game. I was board hopping, and I had my scorebook, and I started putting the lineup in for the scorebook for the high school game just to keep track of what's going on. And I remember going, "This is the most peaceful feeling I've ever felt, or I felt. It's just doing my lineup every day. I go, that's what I want to do. Like that's what I really want to do. It's games, just do play by play, do baseball games." And that was kind of the beginning of the itch to get back to doing it every single day instead of ESPN Ithaca, which was great. It just was very sporadic play by play here and there. But with baseball, it's every single day. So if you want it, it's there for you. Just a lot of work, but that's what I wanted.
Talk about a lot of work. I know you wore plenty of hats over there in Brooklyn. We talk about players getting the call. Let's talk about you getting the call. You're moving from Brooklyn over to Queens. Take us through that. Where were you? What happened? Because I'm sure you're never going to forget it.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. I remember there was three portions of the interview process, and I had completed two of the three. So moving on to that third one, I felt really good, and I knew the third one was the last part of it. And in between two and three, the New York Post caught wind that I was pretty close to getting the job, and that article that dropped was before the process had ended. To be perfectly honest with you, and it happened. I was sitting on the couch I'm sitting on now. I basically spit out my coffee when I saw it, and I went, okay, this is real, and that's kind of when it was like, this is happening, because that was, when you're doing an interview process, you have no idea who they're talking to. You're not really worried about that. You just want to do your own interview as well as you can. But when that happened, it was like, okay, wow. I did the final interview, I think that the following day, and then 2 days after the story dropped on the Post, interview process was done. That's when Chris Olivero from Odyssey, the market president, called me. I was outside of the office at Brooklyn. I was standing in the parking lot that I've hung out in for, not hung out in, but been hanging out in for 5 years,
Hang out there. It's cool.
under the shadow of the parachute jump. And it was just like, yeah, your selection. Welcome to the show. So it was amazing, amazing.
And you've really been doing a great job this year. Obviously, you have 162 games to go through as opposed to working independently. I believe that's a 80 something game season. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, what's been the biggest adjustment for you as you've been preparing for 162?
So actually, we were Penn League for the first 2 years, and then in 21 we jumped back to full season, which is still it's still much different. It's 140 games, but you're off every single Monday, and every week you're playing the same team for 6 days. So 6 days in Wilmington in a row, 6 days back in Brooklyn, 6 days in Greensboro, and you get comfortable. And in the big leagues, it's a little bit different as far as the 162 games, because there's such a focus on the story of that game that day in the major leagues, whereas the minor leagues, there might not be a huge story in the game that day. In the major leagues, you have multiple media sessions every single day. You have writers that have to come up with stories that they have to write about the team, and through that comes these little mini stories that you follow as the season goes on. So there's no days off like there are in the minor leagues, because in the minor leagues you don't really have those. The attention is just not the same. So in that regard, it's different. But then as far as the travel goes, it's harder, but it's easier, because in the minors, I was getting there at 9 or 10 in the morning. I was selling tickets, selling sponsorships, running around like a chicken without a head up until game time. And going on the road was actually, I would work on the road selling still, but I would be much more relaxed. Here in the major leagues, you just asked to do the game. So come in and prepare to do the game. When you go on the road, you prepare to do the game. So you can rest at the hotel and things like that. So that stress is not there like it is in the minors. So in some ways, it kind of evens out.
That certainly makes sense. And you've had two great veterans able to help you through it. Excuse me, I combined their names. Howie Rose and Chris Mechkowski. Probably not just one thing stands out, right? Because you're learning as you go. But you could think of, one thing that each of the guys have kind of been able to help you along with this year.
Yeah, so their biggest thing with me, and I'll just kind of say it, is what I was talking about with the minor leagues and the majors. In the minor leagues, it's a little sleepier, and so the games don't really get exciting sometimes. If your team has a big inning, you get excited for that, but it really doesn't become a tight game until the very end, because in the minors you have pitching changes that happen, but they're not integral to the story of that game. So and so just needs to throw his 30 pitches. And so if he gives up 2 runs doing that, he gives up 2 runs. It's kind of understood. But in the major leagues, every move is for a reason. And that just took an adjustment period to constantly acknowledge that, but not just acknowledge that, but make it sound like it's important. So I just had to turn up some dials on making a moment sound bigger than I'm just used to doing, because I've been doing the minors for 9.5 years. For instance, when I'm at home with Howie, I do the third, the fourth, and the seventh inning. In the fourth inning, if it's a tie game and the Mets take the lead, that could be the one moment in the game that tells a story. And at the very end of the game, if they come through or they don't in that situation, the players and the manager will have to answer for that. So just making sure that my sound in the fundamentals of play-by-play rises up to that moment and contextualizing that. That's what they've both helped me with. Howie has really helped with that. Madge is the immortal Chris Mechkowski is the one he's unlike any other producer engineer in baseball, where he'll change some things that I've said. Hey, you said this, listen back to it. What do you hear? And I'll hear something and he'll say, what about try this? And I'll go, you know what, you're right, Madge. And sometimes we go back and forth and I go, I don't really like this, and here's why. And we kind of really study the fundamentals even deeper, things that you wouldn't even think about. For instance, I used to say, and I guess most people would say, lined into left field, and the left fielder comes in to make the catch. But he pointed out, if you say into, it sounds like the ball's into left field. It's on the ground. So try saying line to left field or to right field. Just that little subtlety, and you don't think about it, but all of a sudden it makes a lot of sense. So just those little minute details that the listener probably doesn't even know about, doesn't even care about, because there's people doing games that'll say into, and it doesn't matter. But just those little things, that's what Madge has been really helpful with. And I love that, the back and forth.
Yeah, and I think it's great that even at the highest level, you're still listening back to your tape, and Chris is listening back to your tape as well, because I mean, whatever your level you're at, you can always get better, and you're always going to learn something by talking, by listening to yourself talk. And obviously we all love the sound of our own voices.
Yeah, right.
Look, let's get down to business. The shift, the abolition of the shift is the worst thing to happen to sports in our lifetime. What do you think?
I mean, they're trying. They're doing their best. I still think that the shift was an attempt to see more balls in play, but what that didn't really change is what hitters' approaches are. So if a hitters go up to the plate thinking I'm going to hit the ball at least 95 miles an hour or harder off the bat, I want to hit it at a certain launch angle between 10 and 30 degrees. That's what they think about. The shift there, the shift not there, that's what they think about. What they thought, baseball thought, take a player like Jeff McNeil, who hit 323 last year, I think, or 326. No shift this year. What's he going to hit? 500, 600? No, it's hitting is still hard. The shift being banned didn't, to me, it doesn't really change anything because you still see some shifts. But I personally don't like banning the shift because I like hitters that are the opposite of I'm going to hit the ball 95 between 10 and 30. There's still third baselines that are open that, hey, you can throw a bunt down and get on base. Guys just don't do it because, again, it's not about the shift. It's about their approach at the plate, right or wrong. So that's a very strong statement from you, Jason, but I don't mind it. I don't mind
Trying to
it.
go
I don't like
viral.
the shift.
We have
I don't like banning the shift. I don't mind the shift.
Right. Listen, can the guys in the majors, could these big left-handers whack it down the left field line if they wanted to? It's just that they're not going up there looking to do it. Do they have the ability to put the ball wherever they want to?
Yes and no. I mean, yes and no. You really want to hit the ball where it's pitched, if you can. But these guys are taught if you hit the ball on the ground, it's a death sentence. Those things that they're taught, and sometimes they're true. If you go back and watch old baseball games in the '90s, where men were men, guys are grounding out left and right, and it's a death sentence. So they don't hit the ball on the ground as much. And the reason why they are up there with that certain approach is because you have pitchers throwing 100 miles an hour. You can't dink and dunk 4 singles in a row to score a run. You've got to go up thinking this swing needs to be worth 1 run. If I hit the ball out for a home run, it's hard to hit. So that's why they are calculated in the way that they do it. They take a lot of pitches. The game slows down because they're looking for 1 pitch to drive instead of going up there, with looking to hit a million singles. It's hard to do. So that's why it is, because the pitching is so good.
So we're 61 and 73 heading into today's game. The latest DJ Stewart walk-off hit by pitch as the Mets beat the Rangers 6-5. Where do you see Stewart hopefully fitting in next year?
I'll tell you what, he's interesting because he can hit, and that's what he was drafted to do. The problem is that his outfield game, even though he made an amazing catch against the wall in right center field the other night, his outfield defense needs work. It's obvious. You can see it. His range is not great. For instance, if you watch the Met game tonight or for the rest of the year,
I don't watch Met games. I just listen to them.
Thank you. If you listen to Mets games,
dude.
If you for instance, little pop-ups behind second that the second baseman will drift out and wait for the right fielder to call him off. With DJ, he's not as fast, so sometimes he doesn't get there. Those are the little images to see with Stewart, but he can hit, and if you can hit, there's a place for you always, especially like this. I don't know if he's going to keep up this pace and going into next year. You have to think about that too. Guys are on fire for the 1 month at the end of the year. What will they be over a full 162 if you actually give them the job and you put that responsibility on them too? But I like him. I think he's a great guy. He's a first-round pick that got hit in the mouth because he didn't work out with Baltimore at first. And he kind of had to go back and take his lumps, go back to the minor leagues and rebuild trust. So now that he's doing that, I like him. I think he's a great option. I think he's been given a good opportunity, and he's certainly making the most of it.
And we're here on September 1st. We're going from 26 to 28 players. Obviously, the Mets not in contention for the division, obviously, or the wild card, but still plenty of important things they could take from this month going into 2024. What are you looking to see out of this team for the last 20-something games?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more interested offensively. I think we've seen enough. I hate to say it from David Peterson and Tyler McGill. I just don't think that they've taken steps forward enough to, again, talk about trust. To go into next year as full members of the rotation, they've had ample opportunity to do so. Peterson had a great outing against the Angels last time. If he could do it again, it continues to change the story in a good way. But I'm interested to see, first of all, if and when Ronnie Mauricio comes up, which is expected to be today, how does he hit? Because he's going to need to hit to make up for wherever they play him on the field. I don't think he's. So I'm interested to see where Ronnie develops, because he can really hit, a hit for power. And third base is still unfortunately up in the air with, Vientos' defense is not amazing, but Beatty's defense is not amazing either. Both can hit. I just need to see them both get comfortable hitting. Brett is not a 4A player. He'll hit at the major league level. He just has to show it. And then Alvarez is in a really, really deep slump, really deep. And the Mets are keeping him in there because his defense is pretty close to elite back behind home plate. So that's why he's playing every day. But can he get out of this slump? He has been in it for more than a month now. And I know him. I've seen his energy. His energy is down. He's tired. It's been an emotional roller coaster of a season. Got a lot to handle. I'm just hoping he comes out of that. So really the baby Mets becoming the next core, becoming the next Nimmo, McNeil, Alonso, and Lindor, because they need that. They need the youth to be contributors next year.
Keith, we'll get you out of here on this. Buck Showalter, will he be the manager next season?
Well, they're not asking me my opinion on this, but
they don't call you up. Steve texts you and says, Keith, what do you think?
No, he doesn't text me. So I can only go off of what I think strategically might happen. I do know that the Mets are searching for a president of baseball operations, and that person is above the GM, hires the GM, hires the manager. I think that in turn will make the decision, because it's you don't want a president of baseball ops in there that's going to keep Buck around, and Buck knows he's on the way out and not his guy, and he's going to be a lame duck for a year. You don't want that awkwardness. Not that I'm saying it would be awkward. It could work out great, but I don't know. If they do bring in a one, they haven't done it in the last few years. If they do bring in a new one, then you can probably see just wholesale changes. As if you would see it at a college level. New coach comes in, everybody else is out. New AD comes in, everybody else is out. It's just the way it goes. Buck's been taking it on the chin this year. I mean, the guy won 101 games last year. Is all of a sudden he a bad manager this year? I don't know. I don't know the inner workings of the club.
Listen, it's not his fault they couldn't pitch.
Yeah, it's kind of. The man was walking out to the mound to make pitching changes in the fourth inning in April. Like, but just from a strategic and a personnel standpoint, if they bring in a new president of baseball ops, I think they find a new manager. But that's my thought process. I love Buck. I respect Buck. I talk to him every day. That's just what I think.
Fair enough. He's Keith Raad, the voice of the New York Mets on WCBS 880, and my former ESPN Ithaca colleague. Keith, thank you so much. Tomorrow on WEX On, WEX Off, we'll have Iron Eagle. Continue to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. We really started back up the podcast, Keith, about 3 weeks ago. We started with 5 subscribers. We might be at 17. I haven't checked recently.
Whatever we can do to grow it. And Iron Eagle tomorrow. Why don't you talk to me? Just push that one out.
We need some real talent. He's coming on tomorrow. You were free today.
Thank you, Jason. Good to talk to you.
Keith, thank you so much for making the time.